We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is now, fuck that. Your day's not going well. It can't possibly be going well. Everybody's having a bad day, everybody with a reasonable mind. Um, Election night. A lot of people are wondering what happened. And I'm one of those people. I'm wondering what happened. It doesn't make any sense. It's not logical. There is no common sense behind this whole thing. The question is, how does this happen? And we'll talk about that in a bit. But I'm getting a lot of people coming to my TikTok page, and I'm not surprised. People will come to my page blaming me, saying I lie. Well, if you want to blame me, if that makes you feel better, go ahead. I don't give two fucks about that, but I did not lie. Like I say, I'm a simple minded guy. I'm not a psychic, a seer, a soothsayer. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have any uh, academic experience in the act of politics. I didn't really even get into politics until 2016 when I saw this piece of shit become president of the United States. The only thing I can do as a guy sitting in my living room, an old white guy, is take a look at the facts, try to find the truth, use some common sense and logic, and determine what the outcome will be. And that's what I've done all along. Now, in 2022, it worked. 2022, everybody said there would be a red wave. I said there can't be a red wave because they just overturned Roe v. Wade. That's not a winning combination for an election. And of course, I was right. So I use that same strategy in the election for the following 2 years. Look at the logic, the common sense. It all made perfect sense, and a lot of people agreed with that. But it didn't turn out that way. So people want to blame me. And I'm fine with that. I understand that. People get upset, they strike out, they want to get angry at somebody, and it might as well be me. That's fine. Most people aren't doing that, but I understand the people that do. But at some point, you really have to look at where the problem is. Here's a situation where it seemed like everything was going the way of Kamala Harris and going against Donald Trump. And the fact of the matter is, it was. It absolutely was. I've said so many times Donald Trump lost by 7 million votes in 2020. What has he done to gain votes in 2024? Not only to win, but to gain back the 7 million he lost. What did he do? And the fact is he did nothing. But what did he do? He gained back the 7 million votes and beat Kamala Harris. But here's the interesting thing. The other thing I said was that I expect a bigger turnout than 2020 because people were more afraid of Donald Trump, hated Donald Trump more. He's been exposed, he's been convicted of crimes. He's been found liable of sexual assault, and he said some of the most ridiculous fucking things. But somehow he gained enough votes to win. But somehow there were 20, 25 million less votes in 2024 than there was in 2020. How can that be? Now, some people are suggesting there's some funny stuff going on, and I don't know that that's true, but there are some questions to be asked. We know the Russians meddled in the 2016 and the 2020 election. We knew they were going to meddle in the 2024 election, but we knew kind of what to expect. But on election night, there was 7 or 8 bomb threats sent to election polling stations in Georgia, a very important state. That's interesting. We know that Donald Trump talks to Vladimir Putin with some regularity. We also know that Elon Musk, who's the richest man in the world, talks to Vladimir Putin with some regularity. So to suggest there might be something fishy going on, well, it could be. But here's the problem. The Republicans will scream and yell about fake, rigged elections. I'm guessing the Democrats would do nothing about it, even if it was in fact rigged. And I don't know that it was, but there are some things that bring up some questions. It's interesting. It's interesting. Now, I'm guessing there's a lot of folks saying that, thinking that, well, when this happened, Mike is going to hide his head. He's not going to do TikToks. He's not going to do the podcast. Well, fuck that. I'm a pretty pragmatic guy. I do the best I can to get the result I want. But if I don't get the result I want, I don't cry about it. I don't run and hide because I got nothing to hide from. I did what I thought was best, but it didn't work. I spent the last 4 years talking shit about Donald Trump, exposing whatever the fuck he did, whatever the Republicans did. But if that doesn't take hold with enough people to vote him out of power, not much I can do about it. It's disturbing to find out that half of the American public is clearly racist, misogynistic, anti-Semitic, is open to treason, lying, cheating, stealing. I don't care what anybody says. That has to be the fact. They voted for somebody who they knew very well was all of those things. They voted for them. So if they voted for Donald Trump, they have to be complicit with Donald Trump. And as much as we don't like it, it's something now that we have to deal with. So we can whine and cry and curl up in the corner, but that does no good. When I run into these situations, when I make a decision or make a statement and it's wrong, all you do is step back and say, well, that's fucked up. What's next? That's all you can do. What's next? Some people will think the world is coming to an end, the end of democracy, and I doubt that's true. You see, Donald Trump is a goofball. He's crazy. The Republicans know that. Donald Trump is a willful idiot. Donald Trump doesn't make decisions. He's manipulated by the people around him, the Mitch McConnells, the Republican Party, the wealthy folks, Vladimir Putin. Donald Trump will probably not be enacting a lot of these crazy things he has said, because Donald Trump will say anything at any moment to get attention, to get votes, to get money. And a lot of these things don't really work well for the Republican Party. Like, for example, the tariffs. Now, Donald Trump is stupid, and he doesn't know that tariffs will be a cost to the American public. But the Republican Party does, and they know what damage it will do to the wealthy in this country. So to pull off these tariffs, that's probably not going to happen. We have wild and draconian thoughts of what's going to happen when Donald Trump is in office. And it's probably not going to be as bad as you imagine, because you're imagining some pretty bad shit. That's not to say it's going to be good or we're going to like it or it's going to be good for the country. It's not. But some of the crazy shit, I don't think you're going to see that, because people with a little more intelligence will say, Donnie, stop that. And they'll manipulate him and he'll do whatever he needs to do. The other thing about Donnie is I don't see him fulfilling the 4 years of his term. And I don't know what that means or how that comes about. There's a few possibilities. First of all, he's 78 years old. He's not well mentally. He's not well physically. He's going to do crazy things. He's going to do embarrassing things. And at some point, the Republican Party will tire of this. The only reason they needed Donald Trump is to win the power. They're not going to cede power to him now that he won it. He's not their favored son anymore, because they see what a detriment he is, a liability he is, not only to the country, but the Republican Party if they have hopes in the future. So what's going to happen to Donald Trump, I don't know. Will he be forced out? Will he keel over on his own? There's another thing that I'm concerned about too. Everybody was concerned about the prospect of Donald Trump losing and there being violence. And I was never concerned about violence if Donald Trump lost, because I know the Republicans and the Trump-fucks, they're all cowards, and Joe Biden is the president, and there's not much they can do. I was really more concerned about the prospect of violence if Donald Trump won. And the reason I felt that way was because People on the Democratic side are absolutely terrified of Donald Trump. Their imagination is running wild about all the things they could do, like the deportation, like the overturning of Roe v. Wade and making it a national mandate. That's the things that upset people, the harm that comes to people. This scares and upsets people. And there'll always be some people who are scared and upset that will act out, lash out. Now, I hope that doesn't happen. But I would say this. I would say for the Secret Service to add extra guard around Donald Trump. There are too many people terrified. And it doesn't take much, as we've seen 2 times previously, for somebody to make that attempt. And to be perfectly honest with you, as long as Donald Trump gets into office and the Republicans have power and J.D. Vance is the vice president, there's really no more need for Donald Trump for the Republican Party. He hurts the Republican Party. So I don't know how this is all going to shake out. I just don't see Donald Trump serving the full 4 years. Now, I will say J.D. Vance is not a great consolation, but it's a realization we have to deal with. What does it mean? Nobody really knows what it means, and that's the reason why people are so upset. They're upset because of the uncertainty of it all. People are most fearful of the unknown, and that's where we are at this point. We kind of knew what to expect with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, but now Donald Trump coming back for a second term, it's uncertain. We don't know. We're not sure. So people are justified in being frightened. But that doesn't mean, like I said, you curl up in a ball and just give up. That makes no sense. And if you think that I'm going to stand back and just give up, I'm not going to do that, whether you listen or not, whether you're mad at me or not. I don't give a fuck. There are people that are just as upset and they understand where the problem lies. And I do have somebody I blame for this whole situation. May not surprise you. Who I blame for the current situation we are in is the media. And I'll tell you why. When Donald Trump came down that escalator in 2015, 2016, and announced he was going to run for president, he was not a serious candidate. Nobody in their wildest dreams, especially the Republicans, ever imagined that he would be the president. Nobody thought that. But then what happens? Fox News, of course, jumps on board, and that's helpful to Donald Trump. But even more importantly, the left side media, they said, oh, here's a fucking clown show. Let's put him on. That'll get views. That'll increase viewership. We'll make more money. That's all that matters. We don't care about the country or the people in the country. Let's make some money. So over and over and over and over again, they put Donald Trump on television. Eventually, he gained some recognition, some exposure, and some credibility. And that is the main reason that Donald Trump got elected president the first time. Now, you're probably saying, but Mike, what about the second time? I still blame the media. Think about all that's come to pass in the last 4 years since Joe Biden won the election. The media has always gone after Joe Biden for the tiniest, the smallest things. Oh, inflation is bad. Well, he brought inflation down. But they always went after Joe Biden, but always gave Donald Trump a pass. No matter how crazy a thing he did or said. Well, that's just Donald being Donald, but that Joe Biden, he's terrible. That's what the media did. And then when Kamala became the president or presidential nominee, the same thing happened. They weren't deferential to Kamala Harris at all, but they were deferential to Donald Trump. Donald Trump talked about Haitians eating pets or that Puerto Rico was a garbage dump in the middle of the ocean. They gave him a pass. They could have gone after him. They could have crucified him for many of the things they said, but they chose not to. And why did they choose not to? Because he was the fucking golden goose. He was the one that was making them money and getting them viewership. So I hold the media, both left and right, responsible because they acted irresponsible in this whole process. And the reason they are allowed to do that is because, well, it goes back to Ronald Reagan, the fairness doctrine. That was something that had some guardrails up with the media and limited some of the things they could do. Well, Ronald Reagan took away the fairness doctrine. Then it became the old West in the media. You can do whatever the fuck you want, run roughshod. And that's what they did. It was all about making money. There was once a time when we had journalism in this country. We do not any longer because it's not about the truth. It's not about facts. And it's about making money. And therein lies my fatal flaw. I'm trying to determine who's going to win an election based on truth, facts, decency, common sense, and logic. My fatal flaw is I had no idea that the media and 50% of this country don't give a fuck about that shit. They don't care. So fuck me. Fuck me for thinking better of the country than we are. And that's how we have to really look at it. We have a large portion of this country that are just not good or intelligent people. They're easily gullible. They're sucked into things. They join cults. And then there are the people that will say, well, I don't like Donald Trump, but I'm a Republican, or I don't agree with Donald Trump, but some of his things are good. I ask the question, what of the things that Donald Trump has ever said are good? And this is why I don't think Donald Trump will be making all the decisions. I just don't. Because a lot of the things he said would work against Republicans and those people that support them. So those things probably won't come to pass. That's not to say we aren't going to be going through some things, because we are. Now, the question about Donald Trump's legal problems, the overall feeling is that if he got elected, he could make all the crimes go away, all the trials. And I don't know that that's true. But does that then push off the trials to 2029? I don't know. And what about the convictions? That trial has already been held. He's already been convicted. He needs to be sentenced. What possible way could you stop him from being sentenced? And then if he is sentenced, is the judge handcuffed so that he can't give him the kind of sentence he deserves? Or does he give him the sentence he deserves and then somehow pardons himself? I don't think pardoning himself is a thing. I don't think that's possible. But we don't know. And this is the biggest issue. It's what I said earlier. People are most fearful about the things that are unknown to them. They don't know what is yet to come. And there's not much you can do for people when they're scared of the unknown. All you can do is ride it out and wait and see what happens. I don't know. You know, there's a lot of people out there crying and whining and stuff, and I'm not the kind of person who's going to do that. I've lived 64 years. I've won, I've lost, but yet I'm still here. So I know there's always a brighter light at the end of the tunnel. I assumed that was coming soon. And who knows what happens in the future? We don't know. And that's the problem. But we can't sit here and say, well, we give up. I've got people saying, I'm never voting again. I'm not doing this again. And that does no good. That does no good at all. We are hamstrung at this point, but we aren't done. We haven't lost completely. There still are options for us. We know Donald Trump won the presidential election. And that's weird, isn't it? Why did it take so long to determine whether Biden won, days, but they were calling these races with 2% of the voters in? How was that happening? I don't know if that's something fishy or not, but it just seems strange. It's a question that should be answered. But this is our lot. This is what we have to deal with. Cry and whine all you want, but we have to deal with what's in front of us. And some of us won't. Some of us will cry and whine and just say, oh, the world is going to end. And I don't think the world is going to end. Democracy is in peril, but I don't know that there's any advantage to the Republican Party to dump democracy ultimately. Because you see, there are some things that are going to happen once Donald Trump takes power. If any of his ideas go into action, like everything else Donald Trump does, he'll fail. Those people that voted for him will have fucked around and found out. We understand a lot of Latino males voted for Donald Trump. And that's troubling because some of the very people that voted for Donald Trump will be treated the harshest. You want to cut back on welfare funding and that sort of thing? Well, most of that goes to red states, and all those red states voted for Donald Trump. What are you going to do when they take your money? All the red states that will have the abortion bans, you're going to have wives, daughters, granddaughters, nieces, finding them in a situation where they have an ectopic pregnancy and they could die if they don't get the treatment. But according to some of these fucking evangelicals, they don't get the treatment until the last moment. And unfortunately, we've seen people die in that same situation. Now, I talked to Old Soul, and she's upset, as you might guess. And she does what she can do to help the people in states that don't have legal abortion by taking them in and helping them out. She's upset. She understands this is dangerous. This is deadly to a lot of women. But there comes a point where you have to say, look, you voted the guy in, you get what you deserve. If you live in a red state and you voted against abortion rights, when it happens to you, and it most certainly will happen to people that are anti-abortion, what are they going to do? They're either going to try to get to a state that where it's legal, and that's going to be harder to do down south because you got Florida, you got Georgia, you got Alabama, you got all these places where abortion isn't legal. We're going to have people fly across the country, assuming they have the money to do that. Or the other option is people are going to die. People have said I'm insensitive when I say this, but it's more pragmatic than insensitive. There are people in red states that will suffer mightily under Donald Trump. They will. And they made their bed. They're going to have to fucking lie in it. And when they suffer these problems, these dangers, it's going to be hard to feel sorry for them. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want to see anybody suffer, especially a young woman. But there comes a point where we can only do so much. Old Soul can only do so much. There's not enough people to help them from them fucking selves. You can't. So what happens, happens. I'm sorry to say that, but it's not a matter of opinion. It's a matter of fact. The people are going to suffer. I have a feeling that what's going to happen is people are going to kind of resign themselves to their states. I mean, isn't that what the Republicans want? They want the states' right, at least for now, to decide abortion rights. If you live in Florida, you're fucked. If you live in Missouri, you're fucked. If you live in Georgia, you're fucked. But take me, for example. I live in Minnesota, a blue state, voted for Kamala Harris. Our governor, Tim Walz. You know Tim Walz. Tim Walz has accomplished many things in this state. He's gotten free lunches and breakfast for kids. They codify abortion rights in this state. There's a lot of things he's done in this state, and this blue state is kind of a haven for people of a reasonable mind. So, in terms of me being an old white man living in a blue state, I'm not worried about the imminent danger, but that doesn't mean I'm not worried. I'm worried about family members. I'm worried about friends all over the country that will have to deal with things that maybe I don't have to deal with. And that has to get fixed. The Republican Party has some strength now, strength they shouldn't have. But I need to remind you something. In a democracy, as long as we have a democracy, the strength really lies with the people. Now, the people for many years have been apathetic. They ceded power to whoever was in political office. This is a point in time where we have to realize what we've done. We're paying penance for what we've done, and we have to change it. People say, well, are you just going to go away if she wins or go away if she loses? No. This is about carrying the narrative. This is about being loud and proud and speaking out. And I know people are going to say, yeah, well, Donald Trump come get you. He ain't going to come get me. I'm a little guy. And besides, he's going to have enough problems to deal with once he gets into office, assuming he makes it there. But if you just want to give up in the country and move out of the country, see ya. Go ahead. Go ahead. That's not an option to me because I have friends and family that I'm not going to leave behind because I'm a fucking coward and move to a different country. And does that fix anything? Which country could I move to? Well, maybe Sweden. That would be a good place. That's where my heritage is, but I'm not going to fucking do that. You got to fight this. We do have power, but we have to be willing to exercise that power. It's a power of public opinion. Let me give you an example. We're talking about the media. I blame the media for much of this. The media has been a disservice to this country and the people in it. So what can we do about the media? Well, I'll tell you what you can do about the media. You can stop watching it. I'm making that commitment right now. I'm watching no more streaming news. I'll get what I get from AP and Huffington Post online, and that's how I'll get my news. Once people stop watching what's going on in the mainstream media, they're going to lose money. They latched on to Donald Trump because they thought they could gain money. Now it's important for us to take that money away. And we have the power to do that if you have the strength and temerity to fucking pull it off. This has always been on us. And what happened during that election ultimately is our fault. 20 million less voters than in 2020. How does that fucking happen? The most consequential election in history, and 20 million people decided to stay fucking home. White women in this country voted toward Donald Trump. I understand Gen Z males voted largely for Donald Trump. What the fuck are you thinking? See, here's the deal. I'm a boomer right now. 64 years old. My time is short. No matter what happens, I'm going to be fine because I'm white. I live in a blue state and my life has been pretty much set. My concerns are for young people, my kids, my grandkids, my great grandkids. That's the purpose of the fight for the past 2 years, even though it was all for naught, at least at this point. These young people are the ones in control henceforth. 2028, they're going to be the largest voting bloc in the country. You have to decide, what do you want? Do you want a dictator, autocracy, or do you want democracy? I mean, if it's autocracy and a dictator you want, there's not much I can do about it at this point. I can keep talking, I can keep educating people with what's going on. But ultimately, you young people have to make the choice. I was hoping we, as an older crowd, could fix this for you before we were gone, but you made sure that we didn't because the way you voted. So all I can do is what I can do, and that's talk, educate, expose, and keep doing it. See, that's what people think. They'll say, well, Mike will just go away because we lost. It's his fault. Okay, my fault. It's the fault of the motherfuckers that didn't vote. It's the fault of the media who lied to people and misinformed people. That's who's at fault. But if you want to blame me, that's cool. I don't really care. I don't really care. But if you want to fix this country and you dislike the boomers, now's your fucking chance. And if you don't fix the country, you will have to live with what you chose. And you're young enough to know or not know what that may be. So sometimes people have to fuck around and find out. Sometimes they have to do that. Hopefully that won't be the case. Hopefully we will learn a lesson. Now, as we sit here now, we know Donald Trump is going to be president. We know that the Senate has gone red. We don't know about the House yet. That's the last chance of any sanity if the House goes to the Democrats. If the House goes to the Democrats, which I thought was a foregone conclusion, to be perfectly fucking honest with you, but once again, I'm wrong. I own it. I'm wrong. I don't know how I'm wrong. It doesn't make any fucking sense. It's not logical, but I was wrong. Now, if the House goes blue, keep our fingers crossed for that. It might be a while before we find out because California usually doesn't come back with their numbers for a few days. If the House goes blue, then Hakeem Jeffries is the the Speaker of the House. Let's hope against hope. At least we get that. And if we get that, then at least any crazy stuff going through Congress will be stopped by Hakeem Jeffries and the Democrats. That's a poor consolation, but right now it's the only consolation we have. And this is what I'm telling you. We can't sit here and wonder, what if, what if? We got to deal with what is, and we got to deal with it in the best way to do it. And at this moment in time, I don't know. We have to see how things play out. I don't know how it's going to work. I'm not fatalistic enough to think, oh, the world is over, the sky is falling. There have been times in my life when I thought that, but again, here I sit at 64 and I'm fine. This country has always survived. Donald Trump is a buffoon. He's incompetent. He's inept. That's what we have working for us. He always fails. We have to deal with being a laughing stock around the world. Fact is, there are other countries that are absolutely terrified of what might happen. Let's talk about Ukraine, for example. Donald Trump wants to pull all money from Ukraine. But again, Donald Trump isn't the final decider. Congress is. And you're going to say, well, Mike, the Republicans control the Senate. Yeah, they do. But most Republicans aren't for cutting off aid to Ukraine. They aren't. They've passed bills to send them money. And just because Donald Trump says it doesn't mean that Congress will do whatever he says. Again, Donald Trump was a means to an end, a means to getting the power. But when it comes down to it, they aren't going to allow him to make stupid decisions that will harm them, their constituents, or even the country. Now, when I say not hurt the country, I mean in serious, significant ways. Everything they do is harmful to the country. So we'll see what happens with that. And again, you can cry and whine about it. It is what it is. And I hate using that term, but it is. It's not up for debate at this point as to options. We only have a few options, and they are very slim. But we've got to look at those options and do the best we can with those options. That's all we can do. You can cry, whine, blame, do whatever the fuck you want, but we can only do with what's in front of us and what options we have. So we need to do the best we can with those options. We need to continue to work as hard as we have. Now, I'll be honest with you. People will say, well, he keep doing the podcast. Yeah, I'll keep doing the podcast. And the reason I will do the podcast is people are listening. It's not about whether I want to do the podcast or not. It's about responsibility. People count on you to be there and you should be there. And up until the time when people don't want to listen to the podcast, I won't do the podcast. And you know what? I'll be fine. I'll be fine if I don't do the podcast. But from this point going forward, I'm going to do the podcast. Now, here's one thing I may change. I may change, well, put it this way, I may go old school journalist, be the one person in the fucking country who's going to be a journalist. And what I mean by that is when it comes to what's going on in the news, politics or otherwise, I'm going to give you the facts. I'm going to give you the facts and whatever I know to be the truth. But I'm not going to give you the opinion of what I think will happen because we see where that got us. I took a look at the facts and the truth, used common sense and logic, and I was wrong because we have a lot of people in this country that don't employ those tactics. So what I suggest isn't necessarily right because of the weirdness of this country. So what they did in the old days during the journalistic years when there actually was journalism, what they did was they told you the facts and let you make your choices as to what you think. That may be what I have to do because I don't feel comfortable giving my opinion, especially when I was so far off on this particular one. Whether you value my opinion or not doesn't make a difference. I question my opinion because the only way I know how to figure it out is with facts and common sense and logic. And if that doesn't work, man, I got nothing. I got fucking nothing. So I have to decide what I'm going to do. But regardless of if Donald Trump is the president or Kamala Harris is the president, the conversation has to continue. People have to talk. People have to engage. People have to share information. We are in this position because people are misinformed or just don't know. They haven't cared enough to get involved, or the information they are getting is bad. So somebody has to provide truthful information. Whether it does any good in the long run, I don't fucking know. But as a guy of my age, looking ahead for my kids and grandkids, I got to do something. I got to say something. I have the ability to talk and I have the ability to pass along information. Take what's out there, boil it down to something simple so people can consume it. So it's palatable. Now, whether that's just pie in the sky and not worth the time for you to listen to, I don't know. I honestly don't know. And it doesn't really matter. I will do what I have to do. When I first started doing TikTok and the podcast, very few followers and very few listeners. But I still did it. I still did it every fucking day. And I will continue to do it every day until I don't think it's worthwhile to do it. Because we lost here, I don't take that as a fatal blow at all. I've lost many times in my life, and so have you. But here we all are. So that tells me there's always um, an opportunity. It reminds me of the Jim Carrey quote from Dumb and Dumber when he asked um, Lynn Holly, I think her name is, or something Holly. He said, "What's the chances a guy like me could get a date with you?" And she said, "I don't know, 1 in 1,000,000." And he said, "So you're telling me I have a chance?" One of the things I've always talked about here is hope. And without hope, we are lost. So there always has to be some hope. Or you just give up and fade away and die. I'm not ready to do that as yet. I will always have hope. I will always be searching for that hope. Now, at this moment in time, it may be very difficult to find that hope, but trust me, I will fucking find it. And I will push toward that hope. And maybe I'll win and maybe I'll fail. The important thing is you try. Giving up isn't an option. It's never an option in anything you do. You don't give up. Things don't look great right now, but who knows what tomorrow brings? This country has had a lot of weird things happen to it. But somehow we keep going on. Somehow we keep going on. And I'm a firm believer that that will be the case. It might seem like all is lost right now, but I'm not convinced we're ever in that situation. This country is what, 250 years old? We've gone through some crazy shit. Some of it in my lifetime, in the 60s, for example. That was a bad time. Donald Trump is an absolute fool as a president, but he's not the first absolute fool as a president. Ronald Reagan was comparably foolish to Donald Trump. The only difference between Donald Trump and Ronald Reagan was that Ronald Reagan was an actor and he was fairly talented as a communicator. And for most people, that's all it took, that he was a communicator. But he did some awful shit in this country. He's part of the reason why we are where we are now. So Donald Trump isn't the first fool. He may be the worst fool, but that doesn't mean we can't get through it. That doesn't mean we won't get through it. We will. It'll be harder than we expected. We'll be disappointed. And I got to tell you, I am woefully disappointed in this country. It's going to take me a time to feel confident about anything in this country. When you see as many people vote for Donald Trump as voted for Donald Trump, it's incomprehensible. It's illogical. It's unfathomable. There is no explanation for it. That's why when people come to me and say, what happened? All I can say is, fuck, I don't know. Everything that should have happened didn't happen. So why are we here? It goes back to the climate of this country. There's a lot of a lot of people pissed off. Joe Biden created a great economy. Donald Trump said it was a bad economy. What happened here was the very loud liars were believed before the more subdued truth tellers. And that's a tragedy. I guess we shouldn't be surprised by that in this country, but that's what happened. So what's that tell you? How do we get out of it? You get louder. You get in people's faces. You speak the truth and you keep pushing. That's really the only fucking thing you can do. That's it. People are going to go through grief and they're going to be angry at people. They're going to be angry at the Democrats. They're going to be angry at newsmen and women. They're going to be angry at creators. Don't waste your time. That's not where the problem lies. The problem lies within you because we didn't get enough people to get out and vote. The problem is we didn't use our resources to the full extent. We believed what we heard in the media, and we behaved inappropriately when it came down to the election. Either people thought it was a big win for Kamala. And, you know, people always got on me about that. Don't tell me Kamala is going to win because then people won't get out and vote. And I always said, no, I'm not going to insult my audience by suggesting that if they thought things were going good, they just get lazy and sit on their ass. I still don't believe that's the case with the listeners of this podcast or the TikToks or anything I do. The people who listen to the podcast, the people who listen to the TikToks are intelligent, compassionate people. They know what the fuck is up. They know when something is important. So I don't really think that was the problem. And I can honestly tell you, if you're coming to me for answers as to what happened, I don't honestly know. I'm as confused and flummoxed as anybody. I can't explain it. I was talking to my wife last night and she is very upset. She was crying and saying, "You told me it was okay." And I said, "I did. I can't explain it." And it's tough, to try to explain something you don't know. It makes no sense. It's not logical. Now, when you're listening to this, I will be flying to Washington, D.C., and I've got to talk in front of a bunch of people who are Kamala supporters, Democratic supporters, who I spent some time talking to on a Zoom and said, listen, don't worry. These are the facts. There's no way he can win. Now, I've got to go down to Washington, D.C., stand in front of them and talk to them. Now, a pussy ass bitch would say, I'm not going. I'm too ashamed. I'm not ashamed. I was right as to how it should go. I was right with what is right for this country, but everything went wrong. I think it's important to talk to those people because they're going to be upset and concerned just like you are. And I have to send the message and say, look, it is what it is now. We got it. We don't like it. We're frightened. We're scared. We're nervous. But this is no time to give up. This is the time we've got to figure out what the fuck we're going to do. It's not going to be a fun job, but I'm not going to shy away from it because, as I've said before, I'm not afraid of you motherfuckers. I'm just here telling the truth. And if somebody wants to crucify me because I'm telling the truth, well, have at it. Fucking have at it. I dare you. This is an uncomfortable time for everybody. This is a time when people are uncertain, and I get that. But if you look at your lives, we all go through these sorts of things: tough times, trials, tribulations, tragedies. We all have those things. We have those moments in time when all is lost and we don't know if we could survive. But somehow we always survive. And this, we will survive. I don't like it a bit. I'm upset. I'm mad. More than anything, I'm mad. And I'm mad at how I'm disappointed in the people in this country. And I'm very mad at myself for being gullible enough to believe that truth and facts and common sense matter. Because what we found out on election night is they don't. Truth doesn't matter. Facts don't matter. Decency doesn't matter. Logic and common sense, they don't matter. I'm not happy about that. I'm worried about that, but it is what it is. So we have to deal with that. We have to adjust and deal with the circumstances and the cards we are dealt. And we will. We have to. There is no choice in the matter. So I'll be honest with you. I'm recording this at about 9:30 a.m. on Wednesday morning. I thought, well, I'd record it later in the evening, but it's really not going to change the message much. I'm going to continue doing the Rational Boomer podcast and the TikToks. I'll be talking about the things that are going on, what's going on in politics. And quite frankly, with Donald Trump as president, there's going to be a lot of motherfucking things to talk about. When we've gotten over this grief and we're dealing with the bullshit that's ahead of us, somebody's going to have to talk about it. Somebody's going to have to provide the information that you need as opposed to the information that the media wants to feed you. In the end, if it does some good, great. In the end, if it doesn't do any good, well, at least I fucking tried, you know? I got to do that for my kids, my grandkids, and all of you that have been good enough to follow me on TikTok and in the podcast. See, that's the funny thing. As much as some people might be mad at me because they're disappointed with what happened, with the people that follow me on TikTok and the people that listen to the podcast, I feel a responsibility. I feel a responsibility to be here when things are good and be here when things are bad. If it's comforting to you, then I'm honored. If it's not, then, don't listen. Go listen to Fox News or go listen to somebody who will lie to you, but then you can be right. It's going to be a tough road to hoe. There's no question about that. We've had tough road to hoe before. We had Donald Trump for 4 years before. As I said, in this particular situation, I'd be surprised if he makes it 4 years. I don't know how it will all go down, but I just don't see him going for 4 years. But again, that's my opinion, and fuck me. What's my opinion worth? Apparently, it's not worth much. I try to figure things out to my best advantage. I try to take the facts and figures and say, okay, this is what's going to happen. I did that with the election, and I completely failed. But I'll tell you this about failing. I'm never embarrassed to be wrong. I'm never embarrassed to fail. I always tell my kids, you're better off making the wrong decision than making no decision. Because if you make no decision, you're stagnant. You'll never get anywhere. If you make the wrong decision, you step back, you learn the lesson, you spin around, go around it, and do something different. And I think that's good advice. We did what we did. We thought we were going to win, and we didn't. So what does that tell you? Tells you we got to do something fucking different. We've got to handle it a different way. I look at our political situation, and we know the Republicans are fucked. We know the problems we have with the Republicans. And I've always said I'm neither Republican or Democrat because I have my misgivings about the Democrats too. I thought they ran this campaign quite well, but you have to wonder, how did the Democrats fuck this up? Because they did fuck it up. They had everything going their way and they still lost, save for some kind of meddling that was going on with Russia and the Republicans. I'm not even going to get into that because only whiny bitches start screaming about conspiracy theories like Donald Trump and like the Republicans. We got to worry about what we're going to do next. If there is some fishy stuff going on, we can only hope the DOJ over the next 10 weeks while Joe Biden is still president will look into it. But then, of course, we've got Merrick Garland there. The good news is Merrick Garland will definitely be fired, but we'll probably get somebody worse than that. At this point, we just have to get through this situation. Hope against hope that the House goes to the Democrats. That will help some. Understand that in 2 years, there'll be more Senate elections. And the fact of the matter is, as much as the Senate elections worked against the Democrats this time around, it will benefit them next time around. There'll be more Republicans up for reelection. And in 2 years, we could conceivably flip the Senate back to the Democratic Party. That's logical. That makes sense. But as I said, apparently that doesn't matter. So I don't know what's going to happen. But it's going to be incumbent on us to keep pushing, keep talking, and keep exposing the inequities of this country. And there are many. There are going to be many more. We just have to resign ourselves to the fact that we are going to have to deal with some bullshit. But as I say, we will survive. We will survive. But if you're thinking about not fighting, not giving up, I'm not going to vote again, I'm going to move to a different country, well, you fucking do that. But there are going to be some people that fight and push back. And ultimately, we will win. Not as quickly as we hope, but we will win. Because good always defeats evil in the long run. We don't know how this is going to look with Donald Trump as president of the United States. We presume bad, and we probably are presuming right. Question is how bad and how much of a constraint is there going to be on the Republicans from doing all the things they claim they're going to do, like Project 2025. I don't know that they'll be able to bring Project 2025 into being. They probably look at it as already a loser. Just because Donald Trump won doesn't mean that people are for Project 2025. We are hearing about some horrific things that the Republicans said they want to do. You have to understand when they were saying this, they were saying anything to get elected. Now, they might try to do it, but they'll get some pushback. And if we are the voice that is the loudest, we will be able to stop those sorts of things or at least slow it down. So we'll see what happens. we'll see what happens with that. And I wish I had better news for you. I mean, you already all know the news. I wish I could have an answer as far as what's going to happen and how we're going to deal with it. But based on my experience telling you the facts, based on the facts, I don't know if I'd feel comfortable doing that. We're in a bizarro world where facts don't matter, truth doesn't matter. It's a sad state of affairs. It's a sad commentary on this country. But here we are. So don't cry. Get ready to fight because it's going to be a hell of a battle. But we are in the right. And ultimately, we will win. I just don't know how long it will be. Keep in mind, we're all going to have to live our lives. We're all going to have to do the things we do. I want to spend time with my granddaughter. I want to go do the things I want to do. I want to travel. I want to do whatever. And that's what I'll do. And that's what you should do. The people that live in Florida and Texas, well, they're going to be dealing with some shit too. They voted for this clown. Now they're going to have to deal with the ramifications. And I'm sorry, while there might be innocent people in those states, and I'm sure there are, you have two options: either deal with the shit or get the fuck out of the state. And that's one of the things that these states are going to have problems with, Texas and Florida specifically. You've got abortion bans and you've got young women going through shit and dying. You're going to have doctors leaving the state. They're already doing that. You're going to have companies not want to be connected with an economy that's going to shit in a state that was once like a paradise or a great tourist stop. Tourism is going to stop, and that is their main industry. We already had advisories for people of color going to Florida. They're saying it's not safe. So if people of color or young people, how are you going to build sports teams in your colleges or just get people to go to your college? It's going to be difficult. Red states who have done the things that Texas and Florida have done, they're going to suffer. The very people that voted for Donald Trump, they are going to suffer probably the worst of anybody in this country. Sadly, they're dumb enough to not know it. And I don't relish the fact that they will go through it, but you made your bed, you got to lie in it. So let's see how that fucking goes. I'm going to wrap up this Rational Boomer podcast. This was all completely off the top of my head. I was going to read some emails, but of course, many of those emails came before the election and they just don't make any sense. I'll take a look at the ones that came right after the election and I'll read those. And I'll tell you something I may do. I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure. You'll have a podcast for today, Thursday. We will have a podcast on Friday, but I'm playing with the idea of not doing a podcast Saturday and Sunday and then being back fresh Monday. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about. I'm not sure what's going to happen, and I'm fucking tired. I spent a lot of time talking about this shit, and I'm tired. I'm going to be out of town, and I may just take those 2 days to relax and recoup. Like I said, I'm not giving up doing the podcast. That would be fucking stupid. And that's just not how I'm built. But I may take those 2 days to recoup. I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure what my situation is going to be or how I'm going to be able to do it. And I don't feel up to doing 2 extra ones to put in there ahead of time. I don't feel like doing that. I asked Old Soul if she wants to be on the show. And I don't know if she's going to do it or not. She may. She's pretty fiery. I have some other people that want to be on the show, but I don't know where they're at right now. So we'll just have to wait and see. So as you listen to this podcast, there'll be another podcast tomorrow. And then after that, Saturday and Sunday, there may be no podcast on Saturday and Sunday. I figure it's a fucking weekend. You got to give me a weekend. Monday, we start back up and try to figure out what the fuck we're going to do. It's as simple as that. And maybe by that time, I'll have some different ideas that I probably won't give you because my ideas apparently don't fucking work. but we will talk about things, and hopefully we'll have some guests like Eric and Will and all these people. They're all obviously upset, and they're going to want to get things off their chest. So we will have them here, assuming they're interested in being here. So we're going to wrap up this Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to it. Hold on to hope. It'll be okay. It's not going to be great, but it'll be okay. And we will talk to you again tomorrow.